welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you stopped by today because today we are finally going to do another mystery art doll challenge. Back when I did Toothless, I suggested doing a How to Train Your Dragon themed one, and you guys really liked that idea, so that's what we're gonna do today. So I have roughly about 8 dragon names in this cup. Of course, Toothless isn't in here, and they're mainly from the movies, that way no one is left out if you haven't seen the TV series or read the books. So I decided to go with the ones mainly from the movies. So let's draw, I'm gonna make sure I don't look, let's draw a piece of paper and find out what we are going to make. Make sure I only have one. I don't have time to make 2. Oh, we got the Nightmare, or Hook Fang from the movie. Let me see if you guys can see that. Focus, quit looking at me. Okay, you guys can see that now? I finally got it in focus. Yeah, it says Nightmare, and then Hook Fang is the name of the dragon. So that is what we're going to end up doing today. So let's get started. Okay guys, so the first thing that we're going to work on is going to be the fabric pieces for the body. So of course that means I'm going to show you guys all the different pattern pieces that I drew out to make the body. So right here I'm starting off with the main body and all the little spiny bits that are going to go down the back of the dragon. And now I do have the tail pattern disconnected from the main body pattern, and that's only so you guys can see it on screen, but I'm going to end up taping these together and cutting out one solid piece for each side of the dragon. So that way I don't have a seam going down where the tail connects. And then of course we have the wings. These are going to be kind of interesting because I haven't done wings like this before. And then we have the belly piece and a strip of fabric to go down the back of the dragon. So I think the first thing that I'm going to work on is going to be the little spiky sails that are going down the back of the dragon. I figured this part was really easy and we can just get it out of the way, plus I kind of need these dried and ready to work with in future steps. So I'm just going to make these spiky bits out of felt, so I'm going to take my pattern pieces, lay them down, trace around them, cut that out, and then we can start painting them. So I'm painting them mainly because I want to have the ends fade from black to a lighter color. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to get this a little wet, and then we're going to start painting the very tips of all the little spikes a nice black color, and we're going to try and fade that into the color that the felt is already at. So I'm going to do this to all of my spikes, and then we're going to set these aside to dry. So right here I have the main body piece, the inside parts of the legs, and then the strip of fabric for the back and the belly. Now we can start on the body pieces. Now basically everything for this piece is going to end up getting painted. So we're going to paint the sides of the body, the wings, pretty much everything except maybe the belly piece because I like the color that it's already at. So I'm going to start with the sides of the body and I'm going to get them all nice and wet just like we did with the felt pieces. I'm mainly doing this because it helps the fabric soak up the paint and disperse it nice and evenly. So if you want to kind of create a nice bleed effect, you want to have your fabric wet before you start painting on it. So for this, I'm just using watered down acrylics and I'm just using my brush to apply it where I want, and then I'm kind of using my brush along with some wet paper towels to kind of blend it into the color that the fabric is already at. So I'm starting with a red and I'm trying to have it fade into the orange that the fabric is, and then I'm going to start adding some blacks and browns and just different things all over. I'm mainly just trying to do my best to imitate the colors and markings that Hook Fang has on his body. So as I got to the end of this, I decided to start adding Hook Fang's stripes, and this I did make kind of a big mistake with. I should have waited till the fabric dried and then painted them on, otherwise they'd bleed into each other, and that's exactly what they did. They kind of just bled into nothingness into the fabric, and once it dried, I had to repaint my stripes. So if you want to add details like stripes and lines, I'd wait till the fabric has dried or is just very lightly damp. Okay, so the sides of our body are nice and dry and we can start on the sewing. So I'm going to take the inside parts of the legs and I'm going to lay them out on the legs that are on the sides of the body, and we're going to sew down just the front of them, and I'm going to be using my sewing machine for this. That way I have a nice even line. So we're going to have to do that to both of the legs, and then after that we're going to take the strip of fabric for the belly and we're going to sew our side pieces onto this. Now this is going to be a little bit awkward for the sewing machine, so if you don't want to do it, you can hand sew it like I'm doing. Okay, so our body looks like this right now and our spikes have dried from their painting, so we're going to start sewing them into place on the tail. So I'm going to start at the end of the tail. I'm going to take that larger strip of spikes and I'm going to pin it into place, and then I'm going to take my needle and thread and hand sew everything together. Once I'm done with the first set of spikes, I'm going to take the other strip, I'm going to do the same thing, pin it into place and sew all the way up the tail. Okay, so the body is basically at a stopping point right now. Now we need to work on the wings, that way we can add them to the body. So we're going to lay everything out, get our fabric nice and wet, and we're going to start painting our wings. Now my workspace isn't large enough for me to do all 4 different pieces for the wings because each wing needs 2 pieces. So I'm going to do another pair of these off camera, but it's basically the same thing as what I'm doing right now. So the main thing that I'm trying to do with the painting of the wings is to darken the edges. So I'm going to start with a brown and then I'm going to add some black to the very end of it and just try and fade it from black to brown to orange. I'm going to lay that paint out, blend it together as best I can, and then I'm going to add some spots here and there, just at random on the very middle of the wing. And like I said before, I got to do this to the other 2 pieces for the wings, and then once everything is dried, we can pin everything together and start sewing. So the first bit of sewing that we need to do for the wings is just pin the 2 layers together and follow the outline of the wing. I'm going to use my sewing machine for this, and then after we get all that sewing done, we're going to flip our wings right side out, and then we're going to sew some details on the outside of the wings. So I'm just going to add a little bit of line work to the wing, and also while I'm doing this, I'm kind of outlining where the actual bones of the wings are going to go. This portion of the wing is going to get stuffed. So I've got everything that I want to sew drawn out onto my wing, and I'm going to go over all of this with the sewing machine again. Once that's all sewn, we can stuff the middle portion of the wing that we want stuffed, and we can add a wire frame to both of them. Now while I was at it, I decided since I'm already making the wireframe for the wings that I'm going to make the wireframe for the whole body. Now one thing you can do to make your wireframe a little bit more secure is have the wings and the legs on the same wires. So your left wing is on the same wire as your left leg, and then the same thing with your right wing and your right leg. Then I'm just going to take a wire for the spine and we're going to wrap all of these together, combining them into one wireframe. Okay, so before we add the fabric body to the wireframe, we need to start on our clay pieces. So I'm going to start on the clay head, and then we're going to move on to making some clay feet, and then I think we also need to make some claws for the wings. So like always, I'm going to be using original Sculpting for this. I'm going to start with a tinfoil base, and I'm going to start covering this in clay, smoothing it out, and just trying to get the main shape for Hook Fang's face. So the main shape of Hook Fang's face is kind of like a shoehorn. It's just kind of like rounded, but also kind of flat and curved. So I've got that, and now I just need to start adding the details to it. So I'm going to start with his eyes first, which are just going to be set right on top of his head. They just go right there, and then we're going to start adding some eyelids around it and blend it into the face so it looks a little bit more natural. And then I'm going to take a little bit more clay and start building up his nose and making his nostrils. For his nostrils, I'm going to add a little bit of a scaling effect around them just to make them look a bit more detailed, and then we're going to move on to making his mouth. Now, you're probably wondering how I'm going to be doing his teeth, and we're going to be doing those a little bit later after the clay has baked, because I'm not going to be making them out of clay. So all I'm doing right now is I'm taking a strip of clay and I'm laying it out for his bottom lip, and I'm blending it in, and then I'm using my tools to kind of push in where we're going to add teeth later. So after I have the lip in place and all the holes set for his teeth, I'm pretty sure that's most of the details we need to add. I'm going to have the teeth and the horns made out of something else, so we need to bake this after we add some texture to it. So I'm going to bake the head at 275 Fahrenheit for roughly about 45 to 55 minutes. Okay, so before we move on to making our clay feet, I'm going to finish up our head. Now you guys are probably wondering what I'm going to use to make the horns and teeth, and I'm going to be using this stuff called Instamorph. It's basically a type of plastic that you melt down and you shape and then you let it re-harden. So basically how you use this product is you get some hot water and you pour some of the little plastic beads into the water. They start off as white and then they'll turn to clear once they're ready to be molded. So just be careful and use like a spoon to kind of scoop up the little beads. They'll be all stuck together, and then you can use your hands to kind of mold it into the shape that you want. Now I've used this product a couple different times, just never in a video, so I'm not really familiar with it too much, other than you just need to be careful because everything is hot. So So I made like 20 teeth and then I made the horns. For the horns, I kind of took little wires and I kind of shaped my horn around it to get that spiral. Now with the horns, I'm not going to be able to get all the details into it. I'm sure if I practice, I could probably get all the little divots and stuff, but I'm just going to stick with the basic spiral shape. So once I was done making all the plastic pieces for the head, I glued the horns in, but I left the teeth out. I'm going to wait and add those after we paint everything. That way I don't have to worry about getting paint on them, because I kind of want to use the white of the plastic to make the teeth look a bit more transparent and more realistic. Okay, so now that we're done with the head, we're going to move on to making the feet. Okay, so for the feet, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little wire frame, that way we can make everything even. I'm going to build up some tinfoil on it, and I'm going to start covering everything up in clay. So very similar to how we did the face. So I'm going for a nice bulky leg, and I'm just going to kind of make a nice flat spot at the bottom so it can stand up later. So I'm going to get everything completely covered in clay and smooth it out. Then I'm going to use my tools to put some holes for where we're going to add the claws later. I'm going to add some texture to my clay, a couple little scales here and there, and then I'm going to put these in the oven at 275 Fahrenheit for probably about 45 minutes. After those are out of the oven and have cooled to touch, we can start working on the plastic claws. So I'm going to do something very similar to how I did the horns and the teeth. I'm just going to kind of roll out like a little cone shape, and then I'm going to push the end of the claw into the foot where I have a hole for it and start shaping it to the foot. We're going to let that harden, and then I can pop it off and we can glue them on later. And then the last thing I needed to make out of the clay and plastic was a pair of claws for the wings. Okay, so we can finally start on the painting. So what we're going to do first is we're going to primer everything orange, that way it matches the body. And then after that orange has dried, we're going to start adding some reds, some browns, and even some blacks to this and kind of blend everything together, similar to how we did the painting for the fabrics. For the feet, the last little bit of detail that I added to them was I painted the claws black, and then I also painted those little scales that I have strewn about on the legs, just adding a little bit of highlight and stuff to them. Also, while I was painting the claws black, I also painted the little claws for the wings black as well. Then we moved back to the head and I started painting the horns black and adding some extra details, painting the eyes on and everything like that, and just making sure that everything looked perfect. Also, his under chin needed to match his belly fabric, so I added kind of a khaki cream color to that. And then once all the painting for the face was done, I started gluing the teeth into place. I let the glue for that dry, and then afterwards I mixed up some resin and I painted it over all of my clay pieces. I let them cure overnight, and then the following day I can start working on putting everything together. Okay, so we're finally back to that point where we had the wings on the wire frame, and now we can add the fabric body to it. So we're going to slide that fabric body over it, and then we're going to add the clay feet to the wire frame. So we're just going to take a thinner gauge of wire and we're going to start wrapping the wire for the leg and the wire that's sticking out of the clay foot together until it's nice and secure. We're going to do that to both of the legs, and then we're going to glue the fabric for the legs around the ankles of the legs, let that dry, close up the back of the legs, and stuff them. Now we can take the clay head and we can glue it onto the wire for the neck, and we can start gluing the fabric for the neck around the head. We're going to let that dry for a little bit, and then we're going to take the little strip of fabric for the back of the dragon and we're going to start sewing that in place. So we're going to start with the neck, we're going to sew that all closed, stuff it, and then we can sew the fabric to the wings. So for the wings, what we're going to do is we're going to sew the fabric for the body to the underside of the wing, and then we can sew the back fabric to the top of the wings afterwards and close that up. Then we just need to continue going down the rest of the body and stuffing and closing everything up. Last little detail before I forget, we need to add those claws to the wings, so I left a little hole in them when we were sewing everything together, and I'm just going to be gluing those into place. So I'm just going to slide the claws right into that hole with some glue and let that dry, and then we're all done. Okay guys, and that's how I made the Monstrous Nightmare or Hook Fang from How to Train Your Dragon. I had so much fun with this project. I'm going to have him along with a bunch of other creatures in my Etsy shop, so if you guys want to buy anything, go ahead and check the links down below for that. I had so much fun with this project. Hopefully we can do another one. I'm not sure if I want to just do another dragon from the movies or do another mystery draw for one. Let me know if you want it to be a mystery or if you just want to kind of like pick one that you guys really like, and I'll do it. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!